Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 158 of our little podcast. As always, my name is Dr. David C. Noe. I am here in the basement of the Vomitorium South, down in the bunker, with my good friend and fantastic co-host, Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm feeling great. You know what I was just musing upon?
Yes.
Is that I think in just a few days, it'll be our 4-year anniversary.
Our quadriversary. I was thinking of that same thing.
It's incredible. It's flown by.
It has. Man. Remember, we were sitting on the deck thinking about, let's have some kind of a podcast, and then we were crouched beneath that quilt trying to create some sort of acoustic ambiance.
Yes, I remember it was your idea that you said, you came by and you asked me, hey, do you want to do a podcast for the next 10 years? I think you said yes. And
it was your idea to come up with a great name.
Ad Nauseam. That's right. Yeah. Yep, fantastic. I'm doing well. How are you feeling?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
I took up a new sport last week, as threatened. Do you remember?
Oh, that's right. You've been pickleballing.
I was pickleballing last week.
How did that go?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. It went so well that I'm thinking about going professional.
Really?
Yeah, I think I'm going to enter the maybe the Kentucky Dilby.
That's huge.
Yeah, or maybe the Vlasic Classic.
Also very prestigious.
Yeah, and if they're not available, maybe I'll throw my hat into the Diltona 500.
Oh man. Oh, you think you're ready for those?
I'm probably not.
Okay, all right.
It's a strange sport. You should try it sometime. I hesitate to call it a sport.
Right.
It's the scoring is complex.
It's not the same scoring as tennis. It's
no, similar but harder. And it was my wife who said, and with her usual wit, I think the goal of this game is to get old people moving and to make the scorekeeping hard so they have to think hard about it.
Oh, okay.
And that's true.
Gotcha. So it exercises the brain.
And the body at the same time.
Is it kind of like lazy man's tennis? Is it?
No, I wouldn't say that.
No?
I'm afraid of getting lynched. It's become so popular.
It is really popular.
I had a good time. We should go play sometime.
It looks like fun.
It is fun.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. Yeah.
So imagine hitting a wiffle ball with a frying pan.
Is that what it is?
That's about the level. But how are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well. I don't know if I mentioned on the show, but my wife and I just celebrated our 20-year anniversary.
Oh, nice.
It was great. And so, when you have anniversaries, you think back, and we were reminiscing about an early time in our marriage where we made some stupid decisions.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, what? No, you feeling something coming?
Something. All right.
Well, we made some stupid decisions and we got into some serious debt.
Okay.
Stupid debt. And I did not react to it well at all, and I kind of went fetal.
Oh no!
And my wife had to get an extra job. She was working the diner all day. I had to put my 6-string in hock. It was tough. And we had this good friend who had a beach house. Okay. They said, "Listen, save some money, stay there as long as you want." But the problem was, all I did is I just went out on the dock and just laid in the sun. I wasn't doing anything.
Huh.
My wife was going to work. She's getting really upset. She's like, all of the debt was on her back, right? And every day I'd just be out there laying on the dock in the sun. And one day she came home and we had made
I am so lost at this point.
Right?
I won't ruin it, but we can talk about it afterwards. Keep going.
Yeah. So she was doing these extra shifts at the diner.
Right.
She had paid off about maybe 50% of our debt. And one day she just had it. And she came out to me. I was on the dock and says, "Listen, I know. Listen, look at our debt. We're halfway there, but you're just loafing on a pier." Come on!
So it was Bon Jovi.
It was
loafing on a pier. Funny.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
I
thought you were headed to Otis Redding for a minute.
Oh, Dock of the Bay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is this going to Bon Jovi or Otis Redding?
That'd be another good one to riff on, right? So, okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we got some listener mail.
We do.
Yes, from a fellow that I would like to call a representative of the Flynn Files.
Yes. Right. This guy keeps coming back.
Yeah, he won't go away.
Yeah.
He's like that. He's like that sweat bee that circles at your picnic.
Yes.
Right? you don't really want to smack him too hard out of compassion, but would he leave us alone?
Please.
Right. So why don't you read what he sent us?
Right. So he says, Dear Doctors Noe and Winkle, you kindly gave me an extended shout out back in episode 104 and then 2 more shout outs in episodes 154 and 157. So I guess we're partly to blame. We keep encouraging this. Right? Since the latter 2 I had not even asked for, I assumed a shout out was a one-time only thing. And the most recent one was unprompted by any correspondence from me. To be fair to Dr. Winkle, those latter 2 seem to have originated in the main or in the totality from Dr. Noe alone. So it's really your fault.
Yes, I don't like where this is going.
Under the law on adverse possession in the state of Michigan, I believe that I must go on living rent-free in Dr. Noe's head for 15 more years before claiming ownership thereof. Well, my goodness, he's getting salty.
He really is. And he's an Australian.
Yes.
So what does he know about the laws in the state of Michigan?
Man, come on. Continue with this.
All right. He says, despite Dr. Noe's assumption that I would object that you had already covered the subject of ancient athletics in episode 125, and so were debarred from ever mentioning it again, long sentence with the parenthetical, Tom, I am, in fact, far from being one to complain, even if you were to repeat a topic outright. Still less if you were to look at it from another angle. For example, I would be delighted if you were to do more episodes on Lucian's Alexander or give the Iliad the kind of extended treatment you gave the Aeneid, he says.
That's a fine suggestion.
I appreciate that, Tom. Then he ends with this, Purgatis in aeternitatem.
What does that mean?
Well, charitably, I think he's trying to say yours ever.
Oh, I see.
But I would translate it literally as, may you continue on into oblivion.
Maybe that's what he really means.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yours sincerely, Thomas Flynn.
Oh, man. Well, thank you, Thomas, for your listening and for your correspondence.
In this line of work, what do they say? Any publicity is good publicity.
I suppose.
There's no such thing as bad attention.
Right.
But
hey,
Jeff, what are we doing today?
We got. I'm excited about this interview today. We have one Joe Goodkin who's joining us, and he is a troubadour. He is a wandering bard.
Yes.
And he's done these incredible takes on the Odyssey and the Iliad in song, and he goes around performing these things all across the country, around the world.
Yes.
Yep.
Phenomenal musician, and so we're very excited to welcome Joe to the show. Welcome, Joe, to the program. We're so thankful that you have joined us this afternoon on it's a warm August afternoon, right, Jeff?
Very warm.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So where are you presently, Joe? We see you there and a little bit of your actual background. There's a piano, you might say, and some things hanging on the wall. Where are you located presently?
I am in Chicago, where it is also quite warm today, in the mid to upper 90s. So I feel your pain.
Appreciate that. So as we get started, we're starting out with this article that you sent us, which is actually going to be the title of this episode, I think, Becoming Nobody. And I want to just read the opening paragraph. And then I guess as we go through the conversation, we want to learn about your biography, your background, how you got into this. And then I guess we'd like you to perform for us a little bit at some point, if you would, this one-man, 24-act opera, as it was described. So Joe writes, in Book 9 of Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus famously recounts the story of how he came across Polyphemus the Cyclops, who trapped the trespassing Odysseus in his cave. The titular hero tells the Cyclops that his name is Utis, or Nobody. When Odysseus stabs Polyphemus in the eye with an olive tree trunk, the other Cyclopes hear Polyphemus' distress and run to help him. Polyphemus proclaims that Utis, Nobody, blinded him. The Cyclopes think Polyphemus is a delusional lunatic, and Odysseus is eventually able to escape the cave and be back on his way. So tell us, Joe, how did you get into this? What's your story? What's your background? And give us the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So I became what I call an accidental classics major, I think, as many people do.
Right.
I stumbled into a Greek 101 class as a freshman at Wisconsin-Madison, because I had seen a couple Greek words in an unrelated history book in high school and thought they looked interesting and wanted to try a new language. And by my second semester, I was taking Greek 102, I was taking Greek mythology, I was taking Greek archaeology. And when a student shows that much interest in the classics, a good classics advisor will tackle that student in the hallway and
that's right,
force them to become a classics major.
They're like vultures, right? They just circle around looking, anybody take these classes.
That's exactly right. When they see somebody show up in 3 of them in one semester, especially as a freshman. So I had a really good a great set of professors at Wisconsin in the 90s. A guy named Jeffrey Wills was my undergraduate advisor. But I also had Barry Powell and Patricia Rosenmeyer and Jim McEwen and Laura McClure, and just a really incredible group of, multiple generations, older generation, newer generation. And
I've used Powell's mythology book in several sections. Yeah.
I think all of those,
incredible. Yeah.
I think all of those faculty are in Canton, Ohio, right, in the Hall of Fame.
Yes. No doubt.
Pretty good chance.
First ballot, I think.
That's right. So the term that you had was a palintropos harmoniae. Those were the two words that got this all started?
Yeah, and it was not, I think what happened was this author, Ernst Cassirer, it was a book on 20th century history and fascism, actually, I believe. He just sort of put these words in, it's a Heraclitus thing, and didn't define them. And I was not happy with that. I thought I need to know what these words mean. So it became my major. I went to those lengths to learn these two words. So actually, you mentioned Powell's mythology. I think he was teaching out of the first or second edition when I was taking classical myth with him. And he was really important to me as a performer because he would lecture to a 550 student, myth lecture, sometimes without a microphone. And it was just, it was pretty incredible. He was, I feel lucky to have had him, and gotten to know him a little bit. So that was how I became a classics major. And, that was sort of the beginning of my journey to discover Homeric poetry and to try to find if I could become another link in the chain of these bards that have told the story for thousands and thousands of years.
Now, Joe, what did your parents say when they discovered you become a classics major? Did they tackle you and say, "What are you going to do with that"?
No, the many reasons that I feel lucky in the world. My parents' educational background is in music and English as well. So they were of the belief that as long as you went and you got a good college degree, you would find something to do with it, no matter what field you were in. So it was never
good parents. Yes,
amazing parents, and also, to be fair, long enough ago that the cost of college was a lot different, and the considerations the pressures were different from what they are today, I think.
Sure.
So I feel lucky for that as well. I don't want to represent that wasn't also a part of why I was able to do that too.
Right. Now, after you graduated, did you remain in Madison for a while, looking to somehow leverage a classics degree into Fortune 500 kind of employment?
How did you know? I mean, you guys have done a lot of these interviews, right?
Yeah.
with that path. I didn't. I came back to Chicago. I grew up here in the western suburbs in Oak Park, and I thought what I might do with my classics degree was go to law school. And I worked in a law firm and very quickly decided that was not what I wanted to do with my classics degree. Although I did work in that law firm for almost a decade as a paralegal in the employment group. And that was really an important foothold into a solid job with benefits while I figured out how to create a music career that also incorporated my classics degree. So I did that for almost a decade here.
Okay.
Had you been doing music all this time? You mentioned that your parents were in music. I mean, did you grow up playing instruments and singing? And
yeah, neither one of my parents did it as their primary occupation ever, but they both have played, and they're both still around for their entire lives and sang. So music, I can barely remember not being able to read music. I learned at an early age from my father, who was a pianist. And I picked up the guitar when I was in third grade and started my first band in fifth grade. And,
what was the name of that first band? I got to know.
I believe we were called The Nothing, which really does a nice nexus with the Odyssey here. Yeah. That's right. Which it's a pretty cool name too. And I have to say, I'm sure for a bunch of 10-year-olds, that was probably the coolest thing about that band, I think.
Yes.
That and the pizza we'd have our parents order for us, I guess.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask if the law firm was something like Antinous and Associates. Was that the?
It was a defense firm.
Yeah.
You
had to get out of that because you felt like a suitor, right?
That's it. They were very good to me. I worked at a firm called Baker and McKenzie, which at the time was one of the largest law firms in the world, and I had a boss who created a very kind and generous arrangement where as long as I worked, I think 20 hours a week, I could have health insurance. And when you're trying to figure out how to be a musician, that is about That's like gold right there. So I held on to that job for over a decade, actually.
That's great.
Working various number of hours a week. It was very good to me.
And what were you doing musically? I mean, how did this idea develop? What were you kind of doing when you weren't working? Yeah,
so there was kind of two tracks, which is the way my music career has always been, somewhat to my frustration. There was a conventional track of get in a band, write some music, play some shows in the clubs, make a record, try to sell the record, see if you can get somebody interested in the record, try to go on tour, all those things, which I did in the early 2000s in Chicago. But on the side, I also was writing this one man, as you said, 24 song folk opera is what I called it, retelling of Homer's Odyssey. In addition to my classics classes where I got to read Homer in Greek and in translation, I had something that was in the comp lit department at that time, which was the themes of the Odyssey across, I guess you'd call it a reception class now, although in like 1998, nobody was using that word. So It was in the comp lit class. But we read Ulysses by James Joyce. We watched some movies that had themes of identity and home. So we watched like Planet of the Apes, and we watched Wizard of Oz, and we watched Waterworld, which is why the picture on that article is of Waterworld. I thought
the best touch, I might say. Kevin Costner with a cigar in his mouth. Who's smoking a cigar on a jet ski? That's a new level.
I don't think the Oxford publisher. Yeah. Anyway, that I felt like I could contribute to the genre in some way that was like that, some creative way, like especially something that I thought in a very simple way just recreated this idea of one person with a stringed instrument singing a song and stories for people in a room in a weird way, like kind of stripping out all the other things that go into a lot of these receptions. No moving images, no, not a play, not just like one person with a kithara, with a guitar, singing these songs, and everybody sit still and listen for 30 minutes, and then we'll talk about what the story is. And that was really if I had a thesis for my version, it was that. And it came out very quickly once I started working on it in just a couple months. And then I had this sort of like, I knew I could play with a rock band in clubs. That was easy. But where am I going to get people to sit still for 35 minutes and listen to this, folk opera? And the scary answer was 14-year-olds in freshman English. So, my joke is like, there's no less or more forgiving audience than a bunch of 14-year-olds, because if you come in and you're sort of this young person who comes into their literature class and plays for 30 minutes this song, you immediately have a leg up because you're not their teacher and you're not. Right. You're doing right. But also 14-year-olds have opinions, and they can smell fear, and they, so it was, after them, playing at Ivy League schools was like nothing. I was like, this does not scare me because I've survived 14-year-olds years and years.
So do you remember your first show then on this content? Yeah,
the first time I played it all the way through in front of people was actually in my parents' living room. I curated a very nice non-14-year-old group of people, group of non-14-year-olds to help me with understanding if it worked and if I could get through it. But then my alma mater, Oak Park River Forest High School, gave me a gig to come out and try it. And in a couple other Chicago area schools, the Latin School, which is a private high school. So at the beginning, it was almost more just about, can I remember 35 minutes of music and get through it physically? Will my voice last? I wasn't even thinking about artistically telling the story. It was just this brute endurance. And it was constructed that way very much on purpose, in my head at least. I thought, if this is a story about somebody who's suffering through an enduring journey, I want the person who's performing it to have to work so that the audience can feel, the push and pull of a journey physically and see what the demand is on a performer, albeit, for only 35 minutes. But that turned out to take me a little while to get the mechanics down where then I could even think about doing artistic things with it.
So you remember the comedian Gallagher, I'm sure, whose part of his bit was to use a sledgehammer on a watermelon?
Yeah, I do.
I'm wondering if, as you're playing this and you're describing it, I like the idea very much that you are trying to have the audience go through some of the rigors of the journey as well, that you are representing artistically and which Odysseus lived through Did you do anything in terms of throwing water balloons at them, or so that they would be a part of the experience?
No, I made them sit still, and I did one of my concessions to subtle but important is I generally project the words that I'm singing as sort of super titles. And when somebody calls me out on it, that it's not really an oral performance then and it's textual, I just tell them to shut up. No,
that's wise.
Yeah, it is. It really wins over the audience. For the watermelons and the sledgehammers. But that's really my only sort of concession in terms of giving the audience something else to grab onto other than me sitting on stage singing. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it's not a great video performance. I've seen videos of me playing it. It's just not what it's about. It's me sitting still playing for 35 minutes. And there's a couple good, streamable performances online, but it's designed to be in a room with somebody and sort of counter program all the other ways that people get media.
Right. I was just going to say, I mean, it's such at odds with the jump cut, shrinking attention span, culture that we live in. Right.
Yeah. It is. And it was, what's interesting to me is I've now been doing that piece since 2002. So I thought the attention span was short in 2002. I was like, I better keep this about 30 minutes, because that's what a sitcom is, that was kind of in my head. And now it's 30 seconds, if you're lucky, is sort of a bite of culture. And I think though it still serves as counter programming to that. I think people want that at least part of their life, something like that in their life. The more rush, the more jump cuts it gets, the more hectic. There's still part of the human soul that responds to it, and I see it over and over. It's like you either have to do the thing that's being done and do it really well, or you have to do something completely opposite. Like I think that's sort of the way to approach it. And my thing has become even more opposite and continues to become more opposite.
So how did you compress 24 songs into a approximately 30 to 35 minute time frame? That means it's a minute and a half max per song. That's remarkable.
Yeah, it's efficient. I like to use the word efficient.
Okay.
It's some of the songs are being charitable here. Some of them are 20 seconds. Some of them are more like 2.5, your standard verse, chorus. So it doesn't, my second Homeric piece, The Blues of Achilles, is 17 songs that all sort of, that one runs about 50 minutes. So that's much more like an album of songs that would be recognized as sort of full folk songs. But the Odyssey flows, the sort of the demarcations between the songs very much on purpose are not, the way you'd hear them on a record or you'd hear them live in a normal show.
So, Joe, one of the things that I noticed about, I've been listening to your music, and this morning in my office, I was listening to a number of the tracks from the Blues of Achilles. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't listened to everything, but it seemed that your focus, it tends to be on the songs are kind of, they zero in on the kind of the human relationships. You have the song of between Thetis and Achilles, but I noticed that there wasn't as much about like the gods. Yeah. And your focus is much more on kind of the human element. Did you do I have that right? Or did you have you wrestled with kind of maybe how to maybe work the divine element into it or not?
I've thought about, and Thetis in the context of the Blues of Achilles is functioning more like a mother than a goddess. Like she's there, right. Her immortality is sort of not as important to my song. I thought about that a lot, and my Athena is in my Odyssey. She is there sort of a couple times. What I thought about with telling the story of the Iliad was that there's a Tim O'Brien short story book, The Things They Carried, which people I think read now in high school sometimes. And he has a story in there, how to tell a true war story. And I thought about, because I think what I react to in the Iliad and the Odyssey is I find that they are true stories. Like that's the way they feel to me, not necessarily the details, but they tell human truths in a way that I think Tim O'Brien says you feel it in your gut or something like that, And so I thought, well, if I want people to feel the reality of the Iliad and war, as soon as I allow in a supernatural element in the way that it's represented in the Iliad, that pulls people out of because of the way brains function now, I don't think that would have been the case to the original audiences. They could have integrated the two. But I felt like when I got to this important bickering family on a mountaintop that comes in every now and then, it would pull people out of the human relationships, and they think, well, this story's not real. And I really, really wanted people to feel that reality the way I feel it. So that was why I made that choice very consciously. So
you're more Thucydides than Herodotus.
I've been called that, yeah.
Thucydides with a guitar.
That's
wow.
Interesting. Yeah.
I've been looking for branding stuff. I don't know if that's I don't know if the algorithm. I always say I make anti-algorithm music, so maybe Thucydides with a guitar can. That's good. I like that. So go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say that led me to have to sort of figure out the way the gods function in the story from sort of a storytelling standpoint. And one of the things, I do actually break up the songs in the Blues of Achilles, whereas the Odyssey's played all the way through. Once I start playing, I don't stop, and I have played through some absolute, performer's nightmares of interruptions. The Blues of Achilles is very much like I never play more than 2 songs in a row. I introduce the songs, I tell the story. And what I found is that I didn't realize until I had to actually go out and tell the story is how funny the stuff about the gods is in the Iliad, and how it does. I think part of its purpose from a storytelling standpoint is to allow the audience to get away from the battlefield for these moments.
Completely agree. Yes.
And be uncrushed for a second before they go back.
Yeah.
And so I found that I have to take that aspect of the narrative and I have to put it back in sort of in the way I act between songs, because the songs are, these distilled, intense moments of largely suffering and love and grief. And they're really heavy. I don't need to explain them. There's a lot of information for the audience in there. So I try to I'm not afraid of a joke. I'm not afraid of a funny story that happened at the last show that I import into the next show, because I feel like it'll let the audience dry their eyes for a second before we go back to really feeling the pathos of it. That was something I learned in creating it that I don't know if I was aware of the first times I read the Iliad.
One of the things I was reading some of what you wrote about your Blues of Achilles and some of the and some of these corollaries between what you're doing and what Homer did and Delta Blues. Yeah, it strikes me as so interesting. I mean, I'm a big fan of kind of the early Delta Blues, and it struck me that the Robert Johnsons and the Sun Houses and the Muddy Waters, kind of going from town to town and hopping the rail cars. Yep. It's an oral tradition of its own. And and when you gave that title, The Blues of Achilles, did you kind of see yourself kind of fitting into that tradition? Was that part of it? Or?
What's weird is, and every once in a while, so there's a lot of things I say that my wife gets annoyed with, but one of the things she gets most annoyed with is when I say something and she says, "You're making that up," and I say, "I am, but I think I'm right about it." And sometimes I am. So yeah, dude, trust me, it never gets you in trouble. I went back looking for that when that title came into my creative process, and it's there on basically the first page of my writing book, and I can't remember. It's something that I sort of intuited. There's a song in the Odyssey called Blues and B where I make Odysseus sort of into a talking blues guy as well. That's the way I condense 9 through 12. I just think of it as him being a bluesman telling his story to this audience that he's wandered into. But I never done the actual intellectual reading and the academic work to sort of be on firm ground with what you just said. I knew intuitively that there had been this oral tradition, but I found, and I may have referenced this in the piece too, that you referenced, there's a scholar named David Evans out of, and he studied actually under Albert Lord in Comp Lit, among others. Wow. And he, in the 60s, tracked down some of these still living bluesmen and did analyses of the way they played a certain turnaround in one song. And he used the model, he used Lord and Perry's model to sort of talk about how this tradition had grown and spread. And it goes back even farther than that. There's you can go back 100 years and you can see some in the writing of people connected to blues musicians at that point or influenced by him, how it percolated as an oral tradition until recording. And to me, recording is to the blues what writing, was to Homeric poems. So to me, Robert Johnson feels like the Homer. Like he feels like the guy who comes at the end of it and is, shuffling the papers and doing the perfect versions of it. That's sort of the way I think about him.
Yeah, exactly. And then not to mention all the body of folklore and urban legends and myths that kind of attach to these personae. It's perfect. Yeah.
Someone should make a movie out of that. Like, Where's My Brother? Or what would what would that be called?
Where is my brother? Yeah, that was funny about that movie Up, though. That was what was happening when I was writing. In terms of reception, that was what I had to work off of when I wrote my Odyssey. There was not, because I like to, nothing will get students to pay attention to you than when you start a sentence with "when I was your age," as you know. But I like to point out that regardless of whether you like some of them or don't like them, it's a boom time for reception that I did not have the benefit of, and I wish I did. We had so much less to work with in terms of ways in, accessible ways in any media.
Right.
We had the bad TV version of the Odyssey from Mondesante.
Yes.
Isabella Rossellini was in there.
She was Athena. Yeah.
Good Athena.
That was, yeah. No. The casting is actually is not terrible. It's just the effects have not aged very well. 96.
The Greeks were not happy that an Italian woman was paying.
Oh, I'm sure. But I wasn't happy that Hallmark was doing the special effects. Right?
That's good.
Right.
Yeah. But before we get to the break, which is coming up, we have to actually get Joe to perform for us a little bit here. Some of his blues. So what should we ask him for? His favorite song, his least favorite song, something in between?
Is that national guitar?
It is, yes.
That's beautiful.
So I can just spend the next 45 minutes talking about it if that would feel.
Yeah.
So this is actually, you guys are in Michigan, is that right?
That's right.
So this is a company in Michigan called Mule. I think they're in, I should know this, Traverse City maybe, or somewhere up in that area.
Jeff, you don't know
I don't know this, no.
Yeah, he started as I got this in 2018 specifically. It's a single cone resonator. To write this piece, I wanted a guitar that looked like it could be a weapon in war. And it's certainly heavy enough. But check him out. It's a Mule. He does...
How do you spell that?
M-U-L-E, just like the animal.
Okay, Mule. Okay.
Yeah. It's I don't know if he actually makes single cone resonators anymore, but he does make tricone resonators, and he makes these incredible metal bodied Telecaster style guitars called Mules. I mean, he does really cool work, and this sort of wandered into my life like a magical instrument.
So you're losing me a little bit here, guys. Single cone resonators, dual cone. Can we tie this to the classics somehow? What was Demodicus playing with Nausicaa? Remember when he was...
A Strat. It was
he playing a Strat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Definitely single coil guy, I think.
Single coil guy, definitely.
So why don't the very first song the song that sort of cracked the story of the Iliad open for me as a writer, I was blocked on this story more so than the Odyssey. I found the Odyssey easier. I don't know. I found more paths in, sort of more ways to see the universality that were a little bit easier for me. Maybe because of the course I took in college. Maybe because I was a young person, developing my own identity, and that was and maybe because I, have a mother and father and could relate to a lot of the family dynamics. But the Iliad is such a world that I was not familiar with before I started writing this, that I spent a long time reading and writing and interviewing people and trying to get comfortable with the vocabulary of warriors, real warriors, and how to speak for them when I don't have that experience. That was really important to me. So the song that cracked the whole thing open for me was I was basically gifted an interview with a Gold Star father who had lost his son in Iraq. And his experience was so eerily similar to Priam. His son's body wasn't recoverable. He actually went to the lengths of going to Iraq and gathering up dirt as a body to get closure, which is really incredible. And I got this interview with him, and then I wrote the first song, which is a summary of book 24 from Priam's point of view, and it's called Hands of Grief. So why don't I go ahead and play that one if that's cool? Let's do it. You guys can hear the guitar okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm before you on my knees, kissing the hands of my grief. My son was cut down in the fighting, and your hands took him from me. He was strong as a lion, with a full head of hair, and now it's caked with dust and rotten, but I still see him everywhere. If he had listened to my warnings, maybe he'd still be at my side. He knew the risk but fought for glory, and when he fell, part of me died. I don't have much more to give to a world that's bled me dry. I don't have much life to live, or many tears left to cry. So think of someone who you love, who might someday be like me, and grant mercy to my son's body, and put him in my hands of grief, and put him in my hands of grief.
Fantastic.
That's really beautiful.
Really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Everything about that I like. And I think without the typical flippant remark, the segue, we should just go to the ads now. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good people at Hackett Publishing, with offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, and of course Joe has visited Indiana, and in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where Joe has also visited.
That's true.
Hackett has been publishing fantastic resources for now, 53 years?
Yes,
Incredible.
Yep.
Jeff, what do you like about Hackett?
I love the way my students respond to their translations. And so just this very morning, I had a student in my first myth class of the semester, and she, her father is a professor, and her father has taught from and read several translations of the Odyssey. And she said, my dad was so excited when he saw that you had Stanley Lombardo's translation ordered for this class, because he says it's the best one.
Huh.
And so I love that Hackett makes good use of wonderful translations like Stanley Lombardo, and then packages it in a way that is very affordable for for my students who don't have a lot of money. What do you like about Hackett, Dave?
Oh, well, so many things. I like the affordability. I like the broad range. Maybe that's what I like the best, is they have so many wonderful things on offering.
Yeah.
And coming up, end of September, early October, we're going to have a special guest, one of their fine collection of translators. Our good friend Diane Arnson-Sfarlin is going to talk about some translations of Aristophanes that she has done. But you want Aristophanes, you want epic poets like Ovid's Metamorphoses. We got 2 translations.
Indeed.
The Stan Lombardo and the Ambrose.
That's right.
And also Plato, a new Aristotle series, a landmark Xenophon, Herodotus, Thucydides, you name it.
Yeah.
These folks are publishing great classics. But is it only the classics?
No, of course not. You can find stuff from all different corners of academia, history, philosophy, religion. Check out Hackett Publishing's website, HACKETT publishing.com. Check out their amazing catalog. Your jaw will drop at the affordable prices. And do yourself a favor. Order yourself some books and then drop this coupon code into the box, AN2024. And Dave, what will get them?
Well, it'll get them, first of all, the opportunity to support what could be their favorite podcast.
Yes.
Or at least in the top 100.
I hope so.
And it will get them 15% Did I say 50?
No,
No.
No.
20% off the entire order.
That's right.
And free shipping. So don't curse the darkness. Light a candle and use it to read a book from Hackett.
Do it today. This episode of Ad Nauseam is also brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Ratio Coffee, the brainchild of one Mark Hellwig. I think you often refer to him as an entrepreneur.
That's correct.
Right. He originating out in Portland.
That's right.
And I've heard that out there in the Northwest, they know something, a thing or two about coffee.
I think so.
Yes.
You are absolutely right.
Where he started this company.
That's correct.
To make these incredible pour-over machines and take coffee making to the next level.
That's correct. So they started shipping the Ratio 8 in January 2015, so more than 9 years ago.
Wow.
But first they had to design this revolutionary product. And Mark says, we made a ton of mistakes along the way. The journey unfolded over nearly 2 years, starting with concepting meetings, design iterations, market research, prototype development, production facility visits, and lots of continuous refinement. Sometime ask me about the 4 pallets of hand-blown glass parts we had to recycle because they didn't mate properly with the metal parts.
Oh, man.
That sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it?
It does.
He says, developing a product built of natural materials with a high design aesthetic that delivers a consistently exceptional product, great coffee, is a lot harder than I thought. And I thought it was going to be pretty hard. Well, I'm glad we're on this side of the process. There was a lot we learned, and we had a lot of fun. I, for one, am glad that Mark persevered through the design
me too.
Aspects, because now we have the Ratio 8, the flagship, what your sons like to call the Millennium Falcon of coffee makers.
That's true. Yeah.
And the Ratio 6, you were a longtime user of the 6.
Yes.
How was
Loved
that
it.
experience?
I loved it. Yeah, it was a great machine. No complaints. I mean, I just had the opportunity to level up to the 8.
Yep.
Which is fantastic. And then coming soon, we've got the 4.
That's right. The first affordable and beautiful half-batch pour-over machine. The 4 is Ratio's smallest brewer yet, an agile, sleek machine. I think it'd be good at pickleball. That puts out between 5 and 20 ounces of coffee per batch. Enough for 1 to 2 reasonably sized cups or 1 big travel mug. I got to tell you, Jeff, the 4 is going to ship in October.
Yes.
And I am so excited because I'm signed up for one. And I might just temporarily retire the 8.
Really?
Well, I might mothball it. I don't know, leave it to my great-great-great-grandchildren because it'll still be doing fine then.
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm really the only one in my family that drinks coffee.
That's right. Yes.
And I'm thinking the 4 is going to hit the sweet spot.
That sounds great. I would love to have one for my office. It seems to be perfect.
You would be even more popular among all your colleagues than you already are.
Indeed.
They're
right.
mobbing your office, right?
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff, can you help me with this? Jeff, can you help me with that? But now with the coffee.
Oh, man. It takes it up a notch, right? So this is coming out in October. We're gonna listeners should stay tuned. We're gonna hopefully have a giveaway.
That's correct.
Yep. So I'm excited about that. So hey, listeners, go to ratiocoffee.com. Check out these wonderful machines. The 8, the 6, coming soon the 4. If you want to pick one of these up and get a bargain, type in this copy code
coupon code.
Sorry, for August ANCOP8.
Uh-huh.
The P, Dave, got any idea?
Let's see. I think it stands for, before it has stood for prodigious, profound, preciosity.
Phenomenal, maybe.
Oh, I like that. Phenomenal. No, we had
We've done that one already. Okay.
Boy, I'm really at a loss.
Man,
I could say nonplussed, but no, that won't work.
Right.
How about we leave it to the listener this time to figure out what the P stands for?
They can fill in the blank. Like
Definitely does not stand for percolate.
No, absolutely does not.
This is an automatic pour-over machine.
That's right.
ANCOP8.
That will get you 15% off your entire order.
Check it out.
All right, as we get back into it, Joe, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, as you were kind of thinking about putting all this stuff together and doing what you do with the music, was part of the impetus behind it was, hey, if the classics are going to survive, we need to popularize it. And did you see this specifically as an avenue for kind of bringing the classics to a wider audience, or was that not forefront in your mind?
I think I liked the idea that I could be sort of a messenger for that, for sure. I think I don't know if, again, when I started doing this and I was 23, 24, when I wrote my Odyssey, I don't know if I think I was chasing something that made me feel something that I wanted other people to feel. So I don't think anybody sits there and is like, 20 years from now, I'll be a modern bard who, travels the world. But I knew there was something there. I knew I had a Brother Where Art Thou. I'd seen a stage version of the Odyssey here in Chicago at the Goodman that was really...
Oh, Mary Zimmerman's.
It was
right?
Mary Zimmerman's. Exactly.
Yeah, I saw that too. It's phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Yes.
And it was really, I guess what I felt was sometimes missing was just creating human feeling around the material. And so, yes, as much as, that's why to me, stories get retold because they make people feel things. That's how they preserve their own legacies, I think. If they can, it's almost like an evolution thing. Like if you can get 10 people to retell a story, then there's a better chance that, 100 more people are going to retell it. And
right.
Sometimes I think, and I love the intellectual and academic study of it. I had incredible Greek teachers. I took 9 semesters of Greek in college, including Greek comp, which almost destroyed me. But I don't, and I think the study of it is really important, but I think that it doesn't need to just be that. And there are so many different ways to bring people into it and have a move. And you never know which one of those is going to take a person to get into it academically or just to get their family into it or something like that. So yeah, maybe I had an inkling that I wanted to just broaden the appeal of it. And
sure.
And then by doing that, like you said, more people would be into it and it would expand the discipline.
Yeah. To follow up on that, talk about some of the responses that you've gotten and like things that maybe surprised you or really kind of excited you, people that came up and talked to you afterwards or
it's I'd say, well, no, it's not different. So I've done, between the two pieces now, I've done almost 500 performances and
wow.
I've done all 50 US states as of last November. I've been lucky enough to play in Athens at the American School. I played in Rome. I just did 2 weeks in the UK, in Ireland, where I got to play at Oxford and Cambridge and a bunch of other places there. And one of the things I've learned that has been a humbling experience and an important experience is the more I can go into it and let the audience tell me what they get out of it. I've baked all my takes into the material. Like I've thought about what I think and I've put it into these songs. Right. And yes, there are some things I'd love to talk about with an audience and have them bring to me. But it's the more I can let go and let them discover what they want to discover in the material. And sometimes that's something fairly obvious. I've had veterans and military connected families come up and talk about their experience listening to the Blues of Achilles. That's really meaningful to me because I thought about that a lot and it was really important to me and has sort of continued to be important to me. Sometimes it's something really personal, like a new father crying at the song about Odysseus, seeing Telemachus for the first time in 20 years and coming up and telling me that they had that emotional connection to it. But it's almost always that, like, just when I see people feeling something and then I feel connected to them and I feel like the material has created the connection, I could list 100 things, 200 things. I mean, every performance has something for me. And again, what I come out of that is feeling, which is very humbled by it. Just to be a bard in the stream of this stuff, right? And to be another link in the chain, and to get people to feel something. And I play a lot. I do a lot of work with the National Junior Classical League.
Oh yeah,
which is the high school level, mostly high school level, and those kids are, classics is their world, basically, or Latin is their world. And there's so much enthusiasm there and they have so many, they feel the material so much. And I never got to take Latin in high school. As a consequence, by the time I got around to Latin, I wasn't very good at it. I read
your comment. This is a family show, so we can't repeat what you said about Wheelock, but that's unfortunate. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. Is Wheelock listening? But I took it with Jim McEwen, 8 weeks, 2 years and 1 summer. So it was like, it got the job done, and it got the job done for sort of the major. But I see like the reactions I get from these kids for whom the classics is important. And you talked about like what has been important to me is like, maybe these kids go on and they do study it now in college because they've seen somebody who's gotten a degree and done something interesting with it like I have. I mean, that's something that I would be of real value to me and be really important to me too.
Definitely. Now, if I read correctly in the article, all 50 states, and the last one was Oklahoma. Is that right? Was that by design? Were you just putting Oklahoma off?
Oklahoma was putting me off.
Was this at the university with my friend Sam Husky? I wonder whether it was.
I was at OSU. Is that?
It's in Norman, right?
No, this is the perfectly named Stillwater that I got my 50th state, which you couldn't write. You know, one of the things I learned, I didn't really get the hook to try to do all 50 states until I was like over halfway through. I just sort of looked and I was like, wow, I'm already up to 30 or something like that. And then those last, like, especially because COVID was in the middle of that, and like that became tricky. There was no rhyme or reason as to which state. You know, some of the states, okay, like the 47th or 8th state was Idaho, right? They don't have a college level classics program there in the state, I don't think. Like that's going to be tougher. But then Oregon was 48, and you know Maryland was 45 or 46, and you know I tried not to be frustrated about it, but you know that's part of the journey. Sure.
And
I got there.
Odysseus had lots of frustration, right? I mean, he's stranded on Calypso's island for 9 years, and it goes on and on. So
that's it. Yeah. So I knew I'd eventually get there, and it also became kind of fun to try to figure out how I would get to some of these harder states that either don't have the infrastructure to support these performances. So I got some really nice support from the Society for Classical Studies to go up to Alaska to play Homer and Homer, which I thought was great. Clever. Yeah. That was neat. I got some support from them to, I think the show in Idaho, which was at the BYU Idaho, they supported travel on that. They gave me a couple, I think they're calling it Ancient Worlds Modern Communities, where they try to do outreach stuff. So they've been very generous to me. And, you know, I've gotten money from CAMWAs, and, you know, it's all hands on deck. Whoever wants me.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of roadies and like a bus, and you have to unload and load a lot of equipment, or? I'm being facetious. It's a one-man show, so.
You know, and that's another thing. I did that out of this sort of intellectual prompt I gave myself, you know, keep it one person. It turns out that being a musician now, if you can do a thing by yourself with one guitar and no amplification and no crew, you actually can make a living at it. Whereas even if you have like 4 people and a 1-person crew, you know, and you have to pay for travel, and, you know, I was not thinking about that as a strength. In fact, I thought it was a weakness for a lot of years. I was like, I'm not doing a music thing. But, you know, now when I can just throw my guitar in an overhead bin on a flight and be anywhere and need nothing else. And you know, I fit this university slot of just a guest lecturer now. So it has been a blessing to me that took me a long time to recognize and understand. You know, another thing was COVID. Like, my friends who are more conventional gigging musicians had the worst couple years of their entire life. It turns out what I do works great on Zoom. And when all these schools were looking for interactive online content that was interesting, I can come and play 35 minutes and do a discussion for all these people in these Brady Bunch boxes. And, you know, I worked as much those two hard years of COVID as I did, you know, I just wasn't traveling. I would play an East Coast school in the morning and a West Coast school in the evening. And it was wild and incredible. And I feel, again, really blessed to have had that opportunity.
Now, Joe, I did my grad work at Northwestern, and so I lived in Chicago for a number of years, mostly kind of the mid to late 90s, during which time it was a great time for music. You know, I was there as, you know, the Smashing Pumpkins were blowing up, and Wilco, Liz Phair. So I got to ask about influences in any kind of specific kind of Chicago music.
Yeah, you listed 2 of them right there. Okay. Smashing Pumpkins and Wilco. Yeah. Big hometown heroes. And very important to me for sure. Other local stuff now, you know, we have this kind of really strong, I guess it's kind of alt country scene, alt Americana scene that started kind of through Wilco, but more through like Robbie Fulks, and kind of Bloodshot Records was here. So like that community of music songwriters became really important to me. You know, I was a freshman in high school the fall that Nevermind came out.
Oh yeah.
You know, that fall of grunge basically. So Pumpkins were huge for me, and all those first generation grunge bands were super important to me.
But now, if someone just would, you know, rewind on this podcast and listen to the song that you just played, it would be hard to kind of say, oh yeah, clearly a Billy Corgan influence there. So I mean, I would assume like more blues or Dylan or
Dylan, folky stuff like that. You know, Nick Drake and Joni Mitchell and I'm trying to think of, you know, some of the other songwriters. That stuff I was really into classic rock when I was learning to play guitar. So I was, my first dog was named Hendrix, if that tells you anything about who.
Finally, something I can relate to.
Yeah.
Scrape away this grunge stuff. Anyway.
Yeah. And I was into the blues, but I was more into the guys who were like Freddie King and Albert King and Albert Collins and Stevie Ray Vaughan, kind of those more lead players. I didn't work my way back to kind of that folk blues songwriting tradition until later. It wasn't, it was much harder to get into music then, clearly. Like it was harder to find music and harder to discover it.
Right.
But I've definitely trended more towards that kind of Americana folk. I use the word blues, I think, more broadly than most people do. I just I use it to sort of talk about any song that has sort of that folk form where there's like a repeating 12 or 16 bars. It doesn't have to be, what we think of as, sort of lame bar blues now.
Right.
So, yeah. So, Chicago's been a super important part of that whole tradition for a long time.
Well, we'd like to ask you to play another tune for us because we're starting to wind down here on our time a little bit. And
sure.
You played something from Achilles, right? And The Grief in My Hands, is that the title?
Hands
I'm
of
sorry.
Grief. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
could you play us something from Odysseus? Or did you have something else planned? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, the reason that's tougher is, first of all, it's a different guitar with a different tuning.
Okay.
Which I didn't make it completely easy on myself with this. If
That's
I
fine.
wanted to make it easy as possible, I'd have the same guitar. But also,
just don't start talking about cones again. That's all.
That's good. Also, that piece is such a performance that it's hard for me to drop into any one part and not do the whole thing.
Oh, right.
So it's hard
Whatever
to
you'd like would be great.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is maybe I'll play the invocation for the Blues of Achilles, which is the first song, and that's it's called Somebody Loved, and that's a good introduction into the whole piece because it is the first song that I play. So this is Somebody Loved. I sing of endless blood-soaked earth and bodies crumbling into dust. Man turned animal with rage, consumed by violence and lust. Stretching back as far as time, long before the reign of Rome. I sing these songs for you today, for those who never made it home. All of them were bone. All of them were blood. All of them were flesh. Somebody loved. A mother weeping for her son, a father begging for his boy, a wife collapsing at the news, a child puts away his toys, a friend fallen in the field. The body burned, the grief goes on. So many souls without a voice. So many ghosts that can't move on. All of them were bone. All of them were blood. All of them were flesh. Somebody loved.
Excellent. Really nice, Joe. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really incredible. Thank you so much.
You brought up kind of music in the 90s before we wrap up. I was lucky enough to actually record the Blues of Achilles with the guy named Steve Albini.
You did Nirvana in the second album, right? Or the third album? Yeah.
He did the second major label one. He did In Utero, and he also, you were talking about songwriters, a guy named Jason Molina, who was in Songs Ohio and Magnolia Electric Company. He also made a really important record of his. So he actually engineered the recording of the Blues of Achilles to tape, analog. I wanted to try to create some of the same sonic atmosphere as those old blues recordings that were done to half-inch tape. So we recorded it all in one day. On Memorial Day, actually, 2021 at his studio. And yeah, he passed away not even, I think, 6 or 7 months ago. So I feel really lucky to have kind of interfaced with that tradition around this. I feel really lucky for that.
That's great.
So as we get ready to say goodbye here, Joe, is there anything you'd like to share with our audience? Our audience is made up of I don't know, people all over the world, primarily maybe North America and England. We have some Australians and so forth.
Nice.
Classics teachers, classics students, retirees. Anything you'd like to say to them about this content and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this earlier, but I love interfacing with this material because it makes me interface with human beings. I think that's what's important about it. And so I think there's a lot of right ways to do that. And I would love if people wanted to check the work out. It's everywhere you can find it on my websites. To me, the important thing is to keep telling the stories. I think that's what the legacy is. Keep telling the stories, preserve memories, preserve people's deeds to some extent, as many people as possible. And if anybody wants to interface with me around it, I love hearing from people, and I'll always talk about it. So I really appreciate the chance to ramble at length in this format, because you guys are kind of doing that very thing through your own podcast, which is keeping the tradition alive of talking about this stuff. Yeah, so it's great.
Well, we're so grateful you could join us.
Yeah.
This was so much fun.
Yes,
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, Joe. I can't think of a better note to end on than that. Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Dave, we got to get out of here, right?
Yes, that wraps it up with Joe.
Yes. What a great guest. I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely phenomenal.
That was a lot of fun. But it's not just that the interview's over and we got to get going, but there's again, people at the door.
Yes, clamoring, banging, kicking. Who are those people?
I hate to say it. It's the Spread Poet Society.
What?
Yeah,
we had the shed and the sled and the bread.
And now we got
the Spread Poet Society. What are they complaining about?
Oh, they wax poetic about mayonnaise and butter substitutes.
You're kidding me.
No, exactly. They publish these things. They perform them publicly. Yeah, but I have no idea why they need to use our space, but here they come.
Well, I think it's because they have a lot of spreading to do. They've got Smart Balance Original Buttery Spread. Is that all?
No,
read the copy.
They got Earth Balance pressed avocado oil spread.
Carrington Farms Organic Ghee.
I can believe it's not butter original spread.
So wait a minute. I can't believe it's not butter, and I can believe it's not butter.
That's right.
And they forced this into a can.
Yes.
And then they're spraying it on things.
That's right, exactly. And writing poems about it.
Okay.
Right, yes.
Some others include Benacol Buttery Spread.
Yes.
I smell a lawsuit coming at us, but it would be hard for me to buy a bread-intended product with the name Benacol. Its claim to fame is that it includes plant stanols.
That sounds dangerous.
I don't know
what that is. Yeah.
And then some throwbacks to our childhood,
yes.
right?
Oh yeah, you get the Land O'Lakes.
And Land O'Lakes with that Indian, that Native American woman on the cover.
That's right.
I guess she's responsible for the margarine.
Apparently, yes. Exactly. We got Blue Bonnet.
Yes, everything is better. I hear.
Yes, with Blue Bonnet. Yeah.
On it.
Oh, that's right.
Don't you remember your childhood ad copy?
It's coming back to me now.
Yeah.
Who else we got? We got
Imperial Margarine.
Yeah, Parquet was the one that talked, right? But
it's Parquet, not butter.
Butter,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, talking food. No, not in favor.
It's not good. Yeah.
And then this one's a tub of crock.
That's a tub of, you got the country crock.
Country crock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I promise it's not butter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, while I could go on and on about this, perhaps the audience has grown tired.
But I'm legitimately terrified of these people.
Oh,
so
yeah.
let's wrap this up.
People who have such a prejudice against butter.
Seriously.
I think that the title should be something like anything but butter, right?
Right.
They want to get in here, so
Yeah.
we are vacating.
Yes, but before we do, Dave, people out there, they want to learn Greek. They want to learn Latin. They don't have $15,000 to spend on private tuition. What should they do?
They should go to one of my websites. They should go to latinperdiem.com, and they should check out the program that I have developed, which is based on Hans Orberg's Lingua Latina per se illustrata. Mm-hmm. And this is what I like to call Latin teaches itself. You get to watch me teaching other students in a studio, and you listen to the recording, so you get all of the attention, but none of the pressure.
Yeah.
There are assignments. There are all the stuff that you submit to me. You interact with me directly if you want to, 1 hour per week. Tom Flynn actually showed up recently.
What, Flynn's in there?
Yeah, Flynn is in. Let me tell you.
Man.
We discussed a little bit. And so I'm running a back to school sale. It begins tomorrow. No, actually, I'm sorry. It began yesterday.
All right.
Yeah, August 26th, and it continues to September 4. And it's the back to school sale. The coupon code is BACK, B-A-C-K, the number 2, then the word school, 15, back to school 15.
All right.
Just like you'd expect, but the numeral 2. And this will get you 15% off any of my Greek or Latin courses.
Sounds great.
You can take Latin 1, Latin 2. You can bundle them. You can take my master class on Calvin or on Cicero or on Theodore Beza. And, of course, I've got Greek, too, at mossmethod.com. Now, I know, Jeff, you're a big fan of the office hours.
Love the office hours. Yes. I wish that I myself could join them sometime.
Sometime you can do a cameo. What are you doing on Friday mornings? Teaching, probably.
Yes. Unfortunately, yes.
yeah.
But maybe I could Zoom bomb it sometime.
You could, not loafing on a pier,
Right.
but actually working for a living.
Yeah.
So check that out, mossmethod.com, and almost 2,100 free instructional videos at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/LatinPerDiem. And if you email me nicely, I'll also send you free quizzes.
Wow.
So that you can take... you can watch the video, take the quiz, and get immediate feedback on how you're doing in terms of proficiency.
Excellent. Hey, as always, we got people to thank. Dave, who would you like to thank today?
I would like to thank Mishka,
Yes.
our dear sound engineer, who takes all of this, puts it together, makes us sound better than we do, and she does so with grace and charity and in a short amount of time.
That's indeed true. And then also, hey, Scott Van Zen, Ken Tamplin, what about these guys? We should have told Joe about these guys.
Yeah.
Kindred Hearts.
He loves music. He's quite a guitarist himself. Yep. So Ken has this 5-octave vocal range. He's been trained by some of the best singers in the industry, as I understand. The guy can belt and passaggio and everything in between.
Yes.
And he has a vocal academy. And generous, personal friend, so generous with his music, sharing it for the intro and the outro with the screaming guitar by combination of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Mr. Scott Van Zen.
Yes. Again, so thankful to those guys for their generosity.
Yep. So, Jeff, if they want to get in touch with us, if they want to be their own Flynn, what should they do?
They should go to oddnauseum.com. And don't forget that V. They can check out everything on the website. They can write to us, Dave at oddnauseum.com, or to me, Jeff at oddnauseum.com. If they want to be like, if they want to get in like Flynn.
That's right. Don't forget the V in the word nauseum.
You want to get a shout out.
That's right.
And some gentle prodding pushback from us.
Gentle?
Well, but barbed from Dave's end. Yes.
And what are we doing next week, Jeff?
I'm making a declaration. We're going to do an episode on.
Is it going to be geographical?
It is going to be. It's going to be on Epidaurus and the Asclepia.
All right.
On ancient healing rites and the god of healing. Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Sounds good. Looking forward to that.
And Dave, you have our gustatory parting shot, I believe.
Yes, I do. This is from one Washington Irving.
I've heard of that guy.
He wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and 1783 to 1859. Those are his dates. I had to look those up. So what did he live? 76 years.
It's not bad for 19th century.
Not bad. And this is what he wrote. The revenue arising from his school was small, and would have been scarcely sufficient to furnish him with daily bread, for he was a huge feeder, and though lank, had the dilating powers of an anaconda.
Oh my goodness.
But to help out his maintenance, he was, according to country custom in those parts, probably ate margarine, boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers whose children he instructed.
Do you know in the story who is this describing?
No, I don't know.
Okay,
he just went from farmhouse to farmhouse, teach a little, eat a lot,
Yes.
teach a little, eat a lot. I think that was his MO.
the dilating powers of an anaconda.
Yeah, that's a good line, isn't it?
It's not bad.
Dilating powers of an anaconda. Makes me hungry.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening.
Thanks.